Nick here from the Maine Christian Civic League. I have the opportunity today to have a conversation with Heidi Sampson from the Maine Education Initiative. And many of you probably know Heidi already and know her work. Heidi is a former state legislator. She is a former educator. She's a mom. She's a grandma. And now she is an advocate, and I would say even an activist for education, for our children, for our next generation. And I'm super excited, Heidi, to have this conversation about where our school systems are, where our school boards are, where our kids and our future is at. So welcome.
Thank you. I look forward to this conversation.
You and I have had lots of good and often lengthy conversations about Maine, about where we're at, about where we're going. And I know we share this heart for the future of Maine and share this hope that Maine doesn't have to be 20 years from now what it is today, that we've got a young generation coming up through. So before we get into all your background and your story and all that, can you just tell me a little bit about MEI, the Maine Education Initiative, and what you've got going on right now here in the state of Maine, what you're excited about?
Well, the Maine Education Initiative is an organization that I helped to start literally a week after the legislature adjourned, April 24. And so May 1st, I was out hitting the ground, starting to work with school boards. So we work with school boards and parents. So with school boards, we're helping to educate them, to equip them, and to encourage them to understand their rightful authority outlined in the law. And, I keep thinking how that is actually a biblical principle, that, we are given authority by Scripture. Well, there's also the law that's on the books of the state of Maine that outline what a school board's responsibility is. And they're not educated in that. They don't even know that there's a law in some cases. In others, it's an abridged version of bullet points that the association over the school board, backed by a law firm, tells them what the law is, and this is what they can do. And when you start to pull back the veil and you speak truth, show them the facts, and then give them resources and help them along the way, it's amazing to watch these school board members who are there for the right reasons start governing with authority. And the whole Title IX issue, I believe, is literally a gift. Yeah. And that is, we've been seeing school boards flipping their policies. Last night, way up in Baileyville, we had another one.
Oh, awesome.
So any school boards that you hear about that are changing their policy to reflect the original language of Title IX, which speaks to biological male and female, and then all tangential policies being changed in the school to reflect that. Those are school boards that MEI, Maine Education Initiative, is working with.
There's this where we have citizen legislature, right? And we're governed by citizens. And I think too often we have this expectation that I elected them, so they need to just go and do it. But the reality is, the best elected officials are often the people that really don't know about government. And in fact, they're great because they've lived in the real world. They're a mom and a dad. They've worked a real job. They've spent time in the home and with their family. They're great school board members, I think sometimes because they don't know the bureaucratic system, but that also leaves them short when they get there.
Well, they're played by the bureaucratic system.
And they're played,
So when you can come in and you just objectively share the truth with them, it empowers them. And so it's exciting to see, we've only been doing this for really since officially in January, we started full throttle working with these school boards. Yeah. And we had done a few pilots during the summer right after the legislature adjourned. So it's pretty exciting to see what's happening. And I hear from school board members constantly, because I am the one that is mentoring and coaching them. But we really have a coalition of organizations working with me. And so on the parent side, which is equally important, is parents' rights in education. And we work in harmony with one another, because the ground game of parents understanding how to petition their government, you don't want to come in screaming and yelling, and then you freak everybody out, and then nobody wants to do what you want them to do. You have to be, you have to speak strongly, but at the same time, you don't have to be crazy about it.
Right.
And then you want the school board members who would likely be on your side to be willing to be on your side. And so you don't want to offend them in the sense of you're like, oh well, they're like a live wire, and I don't want to be connected with them. So teaching them that moderation, and also being prepared and to come in and speak. And then when, for example, we had a school board just before, it was Spruce Mountain, just before school ended, where we had a whole group of parents were prepared to show up, knowing that that school board was going to be having an executive session with a second legal opinion of a lawyer that we're working with, to come in and just give them objective truth. Here's the whole scope and sequence of everything you need to know about the Title IX issue, so you're well informed and not just told what the bureaucratic establishment, essentially, I don't know what else to call them, nonprofits, threaten them into compliance, and it's really based out of fear. A lot of things that we're seeing in this world, including in the church, it's a fear model to keep them under control. Yeah. And that's not healthy. And so anyway, we had parents show up, the school board comes out of executive session, they are there to encourage the school boards to do the right thing. They're the wind under the wings of the school board members who are a little bit, they're somewhat uncharted territory. Yeah. And the attorney will tell them that. There's no slam dunk on either side of this issue, whether you go with the federal law on the Title IX or you stay with the Maine Human Rights Act. There is no guarantee one way or the other. But the preponderance of evidence leans towards the federal law.
Right.
On many issues. So anyway, that's essentially what Maine Education Initiative is doing right now, and we're going to continue. We've got a lot of other school boards that are ready to go in September, and I'm excited about it. Yeah,
that's awesome. So you've got all sides of the equation here, really, and they're engaged in something that has a direct impact on our kids, right? Sometimes
Absolutely.
Being engaged in the legislature, or even our folks that are engaged in Congress, the effects are so far downstream. But in this case, the effects are direct.
Well,
right?
Speaking of the kids, at Spruce Mountain, they were playing basketball in the gym next door to where they were having their meeting, and the kids were running in and out, listening to what was going on. And then when the vote happened, and it went to repealing their current policy and to basically adopt our resolution, the kids were all in the gym cheering and war whooping, both boys and girls.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was getting text messages about this happening in real time, and that was
so
really
if we care
exciting.
about public opinion, or the opinion of the youth who are being affected by the policies, you get to see it. See it firsthand.
Pretty fun.
I worked for a governor who used to say, I just remember often he'd say, well, they can sue me. And it was so, maybe it was HR saying, well, this person might sue, or maybe it was some contract entity, this person might sue. And his eyes were always on what's the right thing to do? And I'm not going to be afraid of someone's lawsuit. But when you're you're a carpenter and you run for school board and you don't have a sense of what these guys are talking about legally, it puts you in a really difficult spot. It's a scary spot where they're going like, wow, if you do that, that's illegal, and somebody might sue you, and somebody might do this, and that might, and so to have the kind of the inspiration and the courage of somebody like MEI has got to be huge for those guys to take the right action, and then to have the parents engaged. And so that, to me, that's super exciting, because that's where change begins, right? We are, that is the next generation of voters. And it's, in many cases, the next presidential election is going to see many of those kids in a voting booth. And are we setting them up to be critical thinkers? Are we setting them up to be young men and women of deep conviction? And the school board gets to play such a significant role in that. And too often, I would call it the swamp even here in Maine, right? The bureaucracy is managing that and not the parents and not the community. And that's not how it's supposed to be.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's pretty exciting when they operate in their full authority. But most school boards don't have any idea.
Right.
And so we're one at a time. Make Maine education great again.
Make Maine's education great. I love it.
One district at a time.
Yep.
And it takes investment and coaching and mentoring.
Yeah.
And
and that's when you engage people, I think, in that kind of civic opportunity, it also encourages them that, maybe I'm getting good at this. Maybe I should do the next thing, right?
Then let's look at this policy. And then, so anyway, but I'll say the first school that actually flipped was Hodgdon, RSU or MSAD 70. And I talked to this mama bear. It's almost always the mama bears that are the catalysts. And I remember when I ran for office the last time, I was like, the mama bears don't poke the mama bears. You've stepped over the line here. And the mama bears are the catalysts in large part. Yeah. And so I talked to this one school board member. I called her and I said, so how is it? How are things going? She said, well, the doors are open, the sun is shining, and everyone's happy, and the sky did not fall. And that was the narrative, and she's been out there saying, come on, school boards, you can do it. Yeah. And that's the message we're going to want to be sending out.
The terrible promises they're making will not come true. And that was the lesson I learned in the governor's office all those years ago, right? Most of the time that doesn't actually happen. Threats don't actually come through, or you end up winning. Occasionally you don't. But we live to fight another day, and we continue. Right. What we're doing is too important to not take
and a
the
lawsuit
risk.
Isn't the end of the world, because you may be totally in the right.
Right.
And you will set precedent.
It's called the judicial system.
It's
for
a good
reason.
thing.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So I know you've got, and then we'll get into some of your story, but I know you've got coming up at some point here early this fall a symposium. Tell us a little bit about that, and I know you're excited about it, so let's hear kind of what that is and why people should care.
Well, it's interesting. I was introduced to a woman from Ireland, Jana London. You should check her out online. She's a real producer of content. She and I got talking on a Zoom, and I kept hearing, "You've got to meet her, Heidi. She's the Irish version of you." It's like, what does that mean? So I met her, and literally we started pinging back and forth in this conversation, and I found out that literally the exact same thing's happening here in Maine that I've been fighting in the legislature, and now with MEI and policies on the school board, literally the book issue, policy that's being put in their legislature, all of the narratives, the whole indoctrination with the trans cult, and really funneling kids into to transition and deny who they are biologically. All that is happening in Ireland. It's happening in Maine. Come to find out, it's happening all over the world. This is a global attack on our kids. A flat out, it is a global attack on our kids. And if there is anything that can be done, it's going to have to start with believers who are going to raise up a standard and say, not on my watch. Yeah.
And
so
you got a pretty good slate of people that are coming, that are willing to talk about this, right?
So what we're going to do is we're going to be pulling together, we're going to hear firsthand accounts. We're going to have students, how they've been impacted in the classroom. Parents who've been lied to and kept secrets from as their children are being transitioned. We're going to hear from teachers in the classroom. We're going to hear from coaches who've been impacted. We're going to hear from attorneys. We have a parents' rights attorney, and we have an attorney from Children's Health Defense who's going to talk about school-based health centers and what they're not telling you about these school-based health centers. They're not a good thing. They are not a good thing to be bringing into these schools. And it's really a communist model, but I can go down that road later. But I mean, people need to know that. And then we have medical professionals. We have a child psychologist, and we have a medical doctor who will be speaking on well, the child psychologist, obviously, he was the child psychologist for the whole Kennebunk school system. And so he's amazing.
Seen it
Dr.
firsthand.
Tom Moyer, and he thinks his profession has literally lost their mind. And then this medical doctor, Alan Bean, who will come and speak. He'll speak on like the neurological brain development of minors. And then we'll have some activists as well. Just different parents that have gotten engaged on different levels in their community and what they can do. And the whole point of this symposium is to have people, number one, see what's happening. Because the biggest thing I hear from people as I go around the state is like, oh, it's not happening in my district.
Right.
It's like, wow, wake up and look, because it is happening, because it's an agenda that's in especially in Maine. It's been forced. We have the highest rate of our children in high school and middle school being transitioned in the entire nation.
Wow.
By a long shot. By double digits, like in the 30% range. And the rest of the country is, half of that or less.
Right.
And so it's like we are on steroids here with this agenda.
So I think and we sort of were talking about this earlier, but I think the church and many Americans who, like, they just want politics, quotation marks there, to work. Right? They don't really want to be involved. They don't want to be involved in the fights. And I think many, even in our churches, have this perception that, well, on both the right and the left, there's a lot of exaggeration going on, and I don't really believe anybody anymore because of the exaggeration. And so what you're saying is this symposium is an opportunity to come, and this isn't Fox News, it's not CNBC. Right. This is people who are in the trenches, people who are doing this work, and they are articulating their experience.
Right. You're going to hear it straight from them,
firsthand.
Unfiltered.
Yeah.
And so we have over 20 speakers.
Wow.
And it'll be short, quick.
Yeah.
Bam, bam, bam. They're
So
going to be coming
fast-moving.
in. It'll be very fast moving, and then they're going to leave with a booklet of who those people were. And what is a call to action that they would, in their position, would say? Like, what are the students saying? What should be a call to action? Yeah. And also a resource. I've asked every single speaker to provide us with a resource that they would recommend. And so it's going to be something you can take home. And I've heard from countless people like, well, what do I do? What can I do? I want to get involved, but what can I do? Right. Well, here's going to be like over 20 examples of things you can do.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Well, keep us posted on when that
will do. When
the date is in stone.
Yeah.
And
it'll be hopefully this fall.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, tell me a little bit about, and you don't have to do the whole 300-page autobiography, but maybe close, right? Tell me a little bit about your story, Heidi. So I've known you for, I don't even know how many years, probably since whenever you came into the legislature.
State Board of Ed.
State Board of Education.
13 years ago.
Always known you as a fighter, somebody in the best sense, right? Somebody that when you were on a tear, it's I better either have all my information and my ducks in a row, or I'm going to let her pass. Because you always did the work, and I've always appreciated the passion and the unafraid. We have a culture that is afraid, and to walk into tough situations unafraid, but that had to come from something, right? That doesn't come out of a person that is shallow or with no depth. So tell me a little bit just about your story, how you ended up being both an advocate and an activist for education and for our kids.
It's an interesting, twisting little, many twisting turns. I've learned that the Lord, you may start at one point, and the Lord has things that He wants to work into your life. I call it enforced humility. And some people need more enforced humility than others. And usually the ones that are most hard-headed, hard-driving, tend to have a pride complex. So I'll just put that out there, that God, He wants to break that. Are you willing to let Him break that? And sometimes it gets to be you're like in a fetal position sucking wind. So, and then are you going to get up and move on? And then are you going to come back with the same fight in you, but from the right place? So I say all that because that's essentially, in a nutshell, the journey. but the things that God used have been very interesting. And I'll skip over a lot of things, but I'll start with, and I said this at the Charlie Kirk event, the most recent, most pivotal thing, that decision and choice that I made, was when I decided to embrace the idea of homeschooling my children. And it came from an unlikely source, and it was the principal of the elementary school, who I worked with. I had my own fitness consulting company. I had developed a children's fitness program. I was going all over the country with this fitness program. And
can you tell me a little bit about the fitness program? Because that's fascinating to me. I won't tell you my whole history, but that's fascinating to me. Because I think that's such a, for many kids, not mine, because they run around all the time outside, but for many kids in this young generation, that's something that's missing, right? It's that
sure
activity. And can you tell me just a little bit about it?
So this is going back in the late 80s. I started working. So in college, I was pre-med and sports medicine minor. So I had a double major and then a sports medicine minor. So I always was, and I was a two-sport collegiate athlete. I was very involved in that sort of world. And so after I had done years of research, marine research, and that's a whole nother story for another day, but that was a nomadic lifestyle, not exactly conducive to family life. Yeah. And chasing whales around the ocean, for example. Yeah. And so I'm in Maine, and I'm married, and children are coming, and I have to be a little more stay-at-home kind of person. And what am I going to do? Because I've got, ants in my pants, so to speak. I got to be moving. And so I started this wellness program in my entire district down in southern Maine. Okay. And so I had to sell it to the superintendent of the district, and I had to, the principal of my elementary school. We were doing pilot projects, and we were doing all kinds of stuff. So the wellness program, I think, is still going in our district. And so I had been challenged because because of my fitness consulting, it was called the Fitness Foundation. Really, my strength was in sports conditioning. That was really my niche. Yeah. And so I was traveling around the country doing seminars. And I did a lot here in Maine, but I was literally in California. And it was in California, a guy said to me, he says, there's no way you can get kids in shape before you teach them skills. Because I was saying you can combine the two, have cardiovascular conditioning and skill development at the same time. He goes, you can't do that. And I just looked at him and said, I'm going to prove you wrong. And so I did. And I developed the children's fitness program. It's called Funafit, FUNO''FIT. We do it for the fun of fit. And how can you keep kids motivated, having fun, while they're learning skills, but used at doing cardiovascular conditioning without even knowing it. They were being fooled into being fit. And I did, because I was a personal trainer, and I knew how to do all the, the basic biometrics on whether a child's, what their body fat composition, their cardiovascular, all of that stuff. And we did that, and it was phenomenal, the results. And it was something that anyone could do this. So if it was during the time when they were starting to cut out physical educators. And that was a big problem. And I was like, that's not a good thing. So this was something that teachers, I would do workshops. I'd have the music teacher, the art teacher, the math teacher, the science teacher, and we would be doing seminars. It's like they would have a task where they'd have to come up with ways to keep a kid moving for 20 minutes and use something that's their strength. It was amazing. You have the music doing beats and different things, and then the math, the math teacher teaching them all kinds of things where they were hopping and doing, mathematical combinations of things. I mean, it was a blast. So that's what the Fitness Foundation was. And that was going national when the principal of my son's elementary school said, Heidi, and he was on my board, you need to homeschool him. I said, are you out of your mind?
So Heidi, I have your son as my student, but I don't think he should be my student. You need to take him out of my school and homeschool him. Okay.
Yeah, he said, I go by and I watch him. He is not here. He has an imagination up in the clouds somewhere. And good little kid, but he's going to be pushed through the system, and he's going to be drugged to be compliant.
So can we just stop and highlight the fact that that's the kind of educator that we need everywhere, right? Who is
Yes.
willing to look at a parent and a child and say with love, hey, what I have to offer is not going to be good enough for your son. And then challenge a parent to go do something that they don't understand and have never done. I think that's worth highlighting, because I think there are educators out there like that, but I don't think it's the norm. And
No.
they're certainly not
They're
the
not
ones
training them
that
to
are
be
getting
that
the
way.
press, right, or in the news.
Yeah,
We got
that-
other ones in the news that aren't.
Right.
Not
They're
as
not
good, so-
training them to do that anymore. They're
Yeah.
not training them to be, like Benjamin Franklin says, that being a teacher is a call from heaven. As if you heard an angel say,
Yeah.
do this. And that's a totally destroyed quotation of, but that's the general gist of the
Yeah,
quote.
yeah.
And that was one of those.
So had you thought about homeschooling before?
Oh,
Had
yeah,
you-
and I'm
you
very
had, okay.
emphatic. Yeah, I said, there's no way I'm ever going to do this. And so I didn't know what I was talking about, and I hated school. Why would I want to do anything related to education? I was a scientist. There was pride in that, not an educator. Education was boring in my mind. So I had to overcome my own paradigm of thoughts.
Yeah.
There were a lot of, like the fetal position sucking wind moments. Homeschooling brought me to my knees more than anything I've ever done, and challenges I faced in my life. Homeschooling is the one that changed me the most, brought me closer to the Lord, because I had to hand my kids over to the Lord because I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Right.
And he had to guide me because I was a knucklehead and didn't know what I was doing.
What I love about part of that statement is somehow we feel more comfortable handing our kids over to somebody else who might not even share all of our values than we do with handing them over to the Lord.
And thinking
Right, and
that God could use you to do that.
Right.
He gave you that child.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot. And as I learned, I would share with other people to encourage them. Because when I started homeschooling, keep in mind, this was back in the late 1980s and early 90s. Okay? I knew 2 people who homeschooled. That's it. And their kids were not happy. I was like, whatever they're doing, I don't think I like that.
Yeah.
And I was told there were 2 choices. You can either use Bob Jones or Rebecca. Well, I discovered very quickly that I was basically trying to reproduce public school by just using this material that was burying my child, who's creative and artistic and needs to move all the time. And I was like, I'm killing him. And it was killing me. And I was ready to give him back to the principal a year later. And I called him. It was in January. And this is an amazing story, Nick. And it was a powerful thing that the Lord taught me. But it was years later there was confirmation. So I called. His name was Frank Tarazowicz. He was just an amazing man. And I called him. I said, I can't do this, Frank. I cannot do this anymore. You can have him back. I just don't want it. I don't even like him anymore. I'm like, this is a horrible thing. I mean, this is my little boy. And it's just like every morning it's like, oh my gosh. And he felt it. I felt it. It was horrible.
Yeah.
My husband would come home and it's like I was ready for the padded cell. And he's in there, and it was just terrible. It was just horrific. The fact that my son has forgiven me and he homeschools his own kids is a miracle.
Miracle and a testament, I'm sure.
And so Frank said to me, this is in January, okay? We're in Maine, cold. He said, listen, learning happens many ways. He said, give him a book about trees, send him outside, and lock the door. I'm like, oh, I like that idea. I'll lock that door.
Lock the door.
And you're out there, buddy. And I did that. I didn't know what would happen because I didn't know what I didn't know. I wasn't an educator. I was a mom. I was a scientist. And so he came back in. That was the beginning. When Frank said that to me, my science background kicked in. It's like, what do I not know? I need to research this. Well, as with anything I do, I'll research it to the bedrock. So we go back and we're like, what did Aristotle, Socrates, what do they do? And we bring it all the way forward. What did the Romans do? What did the Greeks do? What did the Hebrews do? What did Jesus do? You study, you go to every single mention of what the Lord was doing. Everything is a teachable moment. Everything he does is a teachable moment. Now, can you put it into can you compartmentalize any of it? Yes, you can. It's a phenomenal study. And I have reams and reams of stuff that I've learned. And as I was researching this, I was starting to develop my philosophy of education, which the State Board of Ed heard all about it, and so did the legislature over and over and over and over and over and over. And I continue with it because it's in my being and I've seen it work. And because I didn't just end up homeschooling my own kids, I was homeschooling other people's kids. I had a one-room schoolhouse with toddlers to teenagers. They would be dropped off at 6 in the morning and they pick up at 6 at night. I lived on a farm, and I mean, I was kind of like, well, it was crazy. It was crazy. Yeah. But kids were able to get out, move around. I learned a lot of things about the balance of physical activity and the learning that has to happen. And most of the kids that I had in my home were boys.
Yeah.
Who really need to move. Well, thankfully, I grew up with all boys, so I was totally comfortable in that environment. I felt sorry for the little girl who happens to be my daughter, who was the toddler in the mix. And she's now dubbed the Barbie with a G.I. Joe attitude. So I'm like, it works. But through that process, years later, my oldest now is a dad. And I call him and I say, so what are you guys doing today? He's like, well, Levi and I just retrofitted my old snowboard with his old car seat, and we are going out. Levi is 6 months old. We are going out, and we are going to smell different conifers. Now stop and think of what Frank told me years ago. He will come in, give him a book on trees, he will come in having learned something. Here I get back. I mean, that just blew my mind. And I mean, it speaks volumes to the teaching model that God taught me. Yeah. And through really the school of hard knocks. I mean, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to have a 10-year-old who kept telling me that I didn't need to teach him because he knew everything. God took him to the ends of the earth before he was born and taught him everything. So Mom, you don't have to waste your time with me. How do you teach a kid like that?
Yeah. Well, by the grace of God, right?
Well, you pray for humility to be enforced and maybe some flexibility. So he was entered into the school of Gumby to have some flexibility training and some humility training. And now he's fine and he's got a great sense of humor. Thank God.
Yeah. Well, it's some of what you say is almost comical to me because we all bought into the system that exists. Right, it's very rigid and it's got these guardrails, and every kid learns the same way. But I think for each of us, when I look back on what taught me the most, there were some moments in a classroom, but it was almost entirely. I'm not a science guy. It's something that didn't interest me that much. I struggled to really grasp it. What I know about nature in the world around me, I learned from my dad. Not in a homeschool classroom. It was walking in the woods with him. It was driving in the car. And I tell this story pretty often because I love it. But my 10-year-old, also a Levi, he said some random fact to me one day, and I said, Levi, where did you learn that? Because it was not me. And he goes, oh, I learned it from Grandpa riding the car. And then he paused. He goes, I learned almost everything I know from Grandpa riding the car. You know, and it's that we overlook these worlds where we learned ourselves that teach us because there is some set of parameters that the world set, 50 years ago.
Or principle.
It is along the way.
As you walk in the highways and byways.
Yep.
You teach them. Those are teachable moments.
Right. And it is that call, as whether you're a parent or a teacher or a carpenter, I keep using because that's always a big part of my life. But whether you're any of those things, that calling remains, right? That you are to teach along the way.
And as parents, we are their first teachers. So why we have it in our head that we can't do it after a certain point in time? It's like, okay, the baby's born, you're not thinking about the teenage years. At that point, you're just thinking about the next feeding and the diaper that needs to be changed. And you learn, and it's like you grow with the child. Same thing with homeschooling. You grow with them as you start teaching them things. And then you get into high school. Oh, well, I can't do high school. Why not? Do you know how to find things? Are you curious? Do you want your children to love learning and be curious and how to investigate things and put opportunities in front of them, or let them dream big dreams and then go pursue them?
Right.
That doesn't take...
And of course the answer to all that is, yes, I do. I want all of that.
Yeah.
And so...
we have to break down those paradigms of thinking that, oh, learning happens this way. Well, actually, that's the worst kind of learning. It's the most base kind of learning because they're not putting all the pieces together.
Yeah.
And that's the piece, that is what Jesus would teach, and it goes all the way back. If you look through history on the great teachers and philosophers, they were looking at the bigger picture. But the bigger picture is made up of little things. Those little moments in the car.
Right.
Those little moments out in the woods.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. And like I said, again, in the Charlie Kirk thing just the other day, I was talking to the young people and I said, God has hardwired you with certain gifts and talents. Those are flickers God has put in your soul. Your job, and the parent's job ultimately, is to find that flicker and fan that flame.
Yeah.
And then you're operating in what you're really meant to be in.
Right.
And we fight that because we have these images of this, that, and the other thing. And for me, it was like running around the ocean. Well, not running, sailing around the ocean, doing whale research. That was great fun. Was not what, God allowed it for a season.
Yep.
I learned a lot of things. I worked with an awful lot of interesting people from the College of the Atlantic. And as little Miss Preppy with a bow in her hair.
Political views.
Yeah. So, I was I was not of their ideology at all.
Right.
But I was enjoying the adventure of what we were doing. But God used all that, so when it comes to science, I get excited about it. I had to get excited about English. I had to get excited about history. And how do I teach it? So these were all things where I had to put my phobia in some cases, or preconceived notions, I had to lay them all down. And as I have worked and coached and mentored homeschoolers because I homeschooled, I'm still homeschooling. I'm teaching my grandkids how to read. I have a 6-year-old that doesn't think she needs to learn certain letters, but I don't need those, Omi. I really don't need to know.
To be fair, there are some in the English language that don't appear to get used, at least the way they're written.
N is one you need to know, honey.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. It's N, and it's N every word almost. And no. So anyway, but as I have coached parents, as I was a supervisory teacher for Royal Academy, and I would oversee students from across the state, up in Canada, and even South America. And I trying to encourage parents, if they're believers, they have it at their disposal, everything they need.
Right.
Jeremiah 33:3, ask of me. This became a life verse. It is a life verse for me. Jeremiah 33:3. Do you want the Sampson version or the...
Give me the Sampson version.
Okay. Call on me. I'm not sitting around playing tiddlywinks. I'm going to answer you.
I'm here. Yeah.
I'm here. I'm waiting. Just ask me. I'm waiting for you. What's taken you so long?
I had a friend.
And I will answer you, and I'm going to show you things that it's going to blow your ever-loving mind. You've never even thought of thinking about some of these things that I'm going to show you. That's my exegesis of Jeremiah 33:3.
You should quote the exact verse for me now, so I can. No, I have a friend who this week said to me, just something. Super simple, but he said, if you knew that God was going to snap his fingers and answer all your prayers next week the way that you wanted them answered, would that change how you prayed this week? And I kind of laughed. I was like, yeah, it would change how much I prayed. It would change the things I prayed for, because you know God's going to do it. And but God says He's going to do it,
He
right? And
says
so
He's gonna do it.
that shouldn't change my prayers
There's a
at
lot of
all.
places
I
He
should
says
be
He's
that
gonna do it.
confident, right? And that confident in those words from Him.
So test Him, you
Right.
know, ask Him, and then watch.
Yeah. It might not be how you expected,
No, exactly.
but He's going to.
Exactly.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I mean, an example of that, I was telling you this earlier about my middle son, and his not wanting to learn how to read. And, you know, I was working on the phonics and everything with him, and it was a battle. It's like, this isn't healthy. And I just remember asking the Lord what to do. He goes, let it go. Let it go. You'll know when he's ready. He's not ready. So each year we would start, okay, Lord, what do I need to do here with him? You know, I'd put plans together, sort of just outlines of targets, so I wouldn't forget some of the things that God was showing me.
Yeah.
And he was turning 10. And I was like, I'm going to have a moron. This is terrible. God, this is not right. You know, and I'm like going before the Lord. I'm just, hey, you know what? I say it like I see it, and I'm going to say it like I think it. And guess what? The Lord is already prepared because He knows what I think before I say it. And so I'm not shocking Him when I'm just being real.
Right.
Like,
right.
this is horrible.
Yeah.
And He's just going to go through life. He's not going to make it. And so it was that year that I was like, Lord, I don't know if he's ready. You know, he fights me. And then one day he's coming home. He comes out of Sunday school. We're sitting in the car, and he's this very articulate little boy with big vocabulary. He was just very funny. And he's sitting there with his arms crossed with a little black cloud over him. You know, he's like the Eeyore cloud. He would get into that mode. Yeah. And I said, what is the matter? He said, it's all your fault. I said, whoa, this sounds big. And I was like, what is my fault? He goes, you have neglected to teach me how to read. Well, you certainly know how to speak. And my husband's looking at me, and he's just smiling. He goes, here we go. And I said, what do you mean? So anyway, he started to explain to me that he was asked to read, and it was 3rd grade. Mm-hmm. And I did not know how to read, and you have failed me, Mom. Okay, I should feel guilty. I'm not feeling guilty. Mm-hmm. Everything inside of me is like, he's ready now. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, have you been willing to learn from me? Well, of course not. It's because you think you knew everything, correct? Well, God took me to the ends of the earth and showed me everything, but this is one of the things He didn't show me. I was like, whoa, way to get out of that one. And so I said, well, are you ready to learn? So this was in the spring. By the end of the summer, he was reading The Hobbit and Hardy Boys books.
That's amazing.
I mean, I was like, whoa, we dodged that bullet. Thank you, Lord. Yeah.
It's also a great reminder that, and not to go down the parenting path too far, but as parents, we often have expectations of our kids that are not for them. They are for how I look as a parent.
Oh, yeah.
Am I going to look bad as a parent
if
my kid isn't smart enough here?
I've got a kid that can't read.
Right.
I have 150 families.
Yeah.
My kid can't read. I was very transparent about it.
Yeah. But too often I will occasionally, and my wife and I will have this conversation where occasionally it's like, well, wait, do I feel this strongly about this because I'm embarrassed?
Yeah. Or
because he or she truly needs that right now?
Yeah.
And to just go back and reassess and where is God at in this?
Yeah.
Is my son ready, or is my daughter ready for this? So anyway,
but through that whole
story.
process, the kids learn to have a relationship with the Lord too. Mm-hmm. They go through their struggles, and that's something I've always asked the Lord to do for them, to give them their kairos moment, where they're young, still under our roof, where we can kind of coach them if things fall apart.
Right.
That they embrace the Lord for their own life, and they learn to walk with Him on a daily basis in the little details of life as well as the big things. And that hopefully we've demonstrated that. But how do you demonstrate? More is caught than taught.
Right.
And so as I go through being broken, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, my oldest, when we finally shifted into more of a thematic approach where everything had to be art. And like I was telling you, so everything started with art. Then I got his attention, but we have to introduce math, we have to have science, we have to have history, we have to have writing, and obviously reading about Leonardo da Vinci was like exciting for him. Well, then we got into science, and then we got into math, and there was a purpose for it. But I had to meet him where he was at, and then that took on a life of its own. And I'll just share another little interesting story. So we as parents can tend to be super, well, depends on your upbringing, rigid about, if somebody's in class and you're doodling, stop doodling. Well, you know what? Some brains need to doodle.
Yep.
Now, my oldest is a phenomenal artist. And he's also emergency medicine, paramedic, flight medic. He was in Iraq, all this stuff. So he would have to take these advanced classes on physiology and anatomy and all that stuff. His notebooks are like Da Vinci type books. You have drawings of something and a few words very neatly written and arrows. But he would literally sit down and retrace the lines and reteach me what he just learned. Verbatim.
Yeah.
Insane. That blew my mind.
Yeah.
I said, oh my gosh. And I've told you to stop playing around and doing all this stuff. I was literally handicapping him from actually being able to receive information. Yeah. So in the military, he was known as Dane Vinci. Because he has that, and one of the principles that we learned about Da Vinci is he didn't finish things. Imagine the ornithopter. If he'd only finished it, we would have had planes 500 years earlier.
Right.
So the lesson to be learned here, my dear, is finish what you start. We don't need to see evidence of your projects from one end of the house to the other. Finish it.
See them finished. Yeah. I have one that is a fiddler, and my wife will bring stuff with her to church or wherever, knowing that Owen's only going to hear if he's got something for his fingers, and which to me is this
kinesthetic learner.
I want to do the stop moving, sit still, but he can't.
Right.
And it doesn't help him learn. That's for sure. The sitting still. He spends more time thinking about trying to sit still than he does about what's going on. So, so you're a homeschool mom. You're a leader in kind of the homeschool movement. I mean, that was early in the homeschool movement.
Very early.
My parents homeschooled me and my siblings. I started in 6th grade, but that was mid to late 90s. So very early.
So I'm old enough to be your mother too? I am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
That's not that old though. So you really had a heart for homeschooling, for education.
I learned to have a heart.
You learned to have a heart. God gave you a heart. God gave you a heart for this.
Yeah.
You've gone from this focus on homeschooling and to what you're doing now at Maine Education Initiative, and you're very focused on the public school system, and which to me is a sign that of a couple of things. One, that you haven't completely lost hope in the public education system as it exists. Maybe you don't have a lot of faith in it, but you haven't lost total hope. But two, that it must be something that you believe is worth at least the effort to redeem. Can you tell me about kind of when that transition happened? What happened that you thought, oh, now I'm going to engage in this side of the system too?
2011, during Christmas vacation, ski season, running a kids' ski program, I get a phone call from Governor LePage's office on my voicemail asking me if I would be interested in considering being on the State Board of Education as a homeschooler. I'm like, that's a crank call. I ignored it. Right after the beginning of the new year, I got another call. And I thought, well, maybe I should call this guy back. It sounds like the same person. I'm like, they're out of their minds. My husband's laughing. He goes, well, dear, that'll be the best decision or worst decision that you make. And I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about. So anyway, I got this call. They wanted me to be considered for the State Board of Education for Governor LePage to appoint me. And I would be the first homeschooler. I was out on the farm in the back 40, and thinking about this, and you hear this little voice. It's like, Heidi, have you even asked me about this? And I remember standing on a rock saying, I don't want to ask because I don't want the answer. and immediately, my heart was broken for kids. Immediately. And he just painted this vision in my mind of the children of Maine. He said, you have spent all these years investing in kids, youth group, homeschooling, all this, and it's like with the same mission to give them the greatest opportunity to live their life to their fullest potential. That's been what I've taught you. I want you to take that to the state, to all the kids in the state of Maine.
Make it bigger.
And he just broke my heart. And I thought, I didn't even ask him, and then he showed me that I have to do this. I was appointed like by the skin of my teeth, or they voted for me. And even some of the Republicans, they were like, no, she's a little too hot. And I was put on the State Board of Ed, and yes, the first homeschooler in Maine, but I found out the first homeschooler in the nation. So I had to go down to DC for training. And they're like, oh, how exciting, an out-of-the-box thinker, a homeschooler. Like I was some sort of freak of nature. And, here in Maine, they were within a month, trying to find a big box to stick me in and duct tape it shut.
Yeah.
But, so that 5 years there. So then I spent 8 years in the legislature on the Education Committee. Not even the Republicans were happy to have me there when I started.
We always say, in a prior job, in training new legislators on how to deal with the bureaucracy, we always joked, but we're serious about something called the Tuesday principle. And it was that Tuesday needed to look just like Monday and just like Wednesday, and anything you do to disrupt that becomes a problem for the bureaucracy. The reality is it becomes a problem for the institution, right? So it becomes a problem for even people of your own party when they feel like you're disrupting what they felt like was their plan. But what we know is it's absolutely imperative that happens, because we have a system, a quote institution that has created significant problems at the State House, but now inside our school system and inside our structures that we almost are not allowed to question. So
I just want to close that loop on the public school. Why am I there? That's our future civil society. And we're raising anarchists and little barbarians.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about that? How are we going to do that? What are we going to do about it? How are we going to do it? And that's why I'm working with school boards, because they are the gatekeepers of curriculum. They are the gatekeepers of the culture of the school. They're gatekeepers of the finances, and they don't know it.
Yeah. Well, and so sometimes you'll hear in the church, you'll hear a preacher say, the kids, they're the church of the future. And my wife, who was a teacher and now homeschools all of our kids, will get very, almost offended by that. And she'll say, no, they're not. They're the church of today. They are part of this. And I think too often we treat our kids in the public school like they're in a little experiment in the petri dish and we're going to turn them. But no, they are citizens today. Yeah. And we have a responsibility. They don't get to vote yet, but we have a responsibility to disciple, to walk along the way with them and invest in them.
Provide those opportunities now. Yeah. Because if we wait, and there's people, I've heard people talk, these different people running for governor, saying things about, well, if we work with young people, we need to get, internships and stuff, start, when they're about 15, 16. I'm thinking, no, 13, 14. That's a sweet spot. And I've had experience with that, like wholesale. Get them young while they're still teachable. Right. Because then they start, once puberty has they've gone through puberty, which is why they're targeting kids in puberty. Because they're the most vulnerable. They're
trying to figure out who they are, right?
So they're still teachable. They're still willing to learn, and they want to know what the right thing is. But somebody has to show them the way, and give them an opportunity, and believe in them, and give them responsibility, and let them fail. but be there to pick them up. And it's a teachable moment. Now what are we going to do now?
Right.
And that builds confidence in them. So, instead of having this culture of like, oh, we can't let them fail, let's just pass them on. Oh, so now they graduate and they don't even know how to read and they don't know how to do math and they can't count back change. They don't even know how to count change.
Right.
I mean,
right.
it's crazy.
Well, and it's not dissimilar to the healthy tension that should exist between a mom and a dad, right? It's the old swing analogy where the mom won't push the kid high enough and the dad will push him too high, and there's a balance. My wife and I have this conversation all the time with tools and dirt bikes and what they're doing, what the boys are doing in particular on their bicycles. My daughter has no interest in risking her life to put something high in a tree that's nailed in there with her 16 penny nails. My job is to teach them how to manage risk within a set of boundaries. Or they're going to manage that risk outside of boundaries where I'm not there to back them up and say like, okay,
I have a funny story to
what
go
happened
along with
here? Well, let's do it. But to go back and reassess, say, okay, what happened here? You did this risky thing within these boundaries and you failed. Let's look at what failure looks like and how can we fix it.
And not be afraid of failure.
And not be, right.
Let them fail.
Right. Instead, we're doing this, let's avoid all risk. And we're just going to close our eyes and we're going to let them, right. And we're going to let them, boys are going to take risks. Girls are going to take different kinds of risks.
And those risks now can be deadly.
Right.
And they don't know how to manage that.
Right. Right, because they don't have the opportunity to do it inside someone's boundaries. They're only doing it outside.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So my kids had the American Handbook for Boys, the Dangerous Book for Boys.
Yeah.
That's those are
It's
exciting
a well-read
books.
one at my house.
Right. So we would, because we live in the woods, we would have a lot of kids over our house, and they were mostly boys. And then you've got this little blondie that's running in the mix, like the youngest of the family. And right in the middle of everything, tattletaling on them. And so one of the things, our oldest, who was going to be the great white hunter, and they learned how to do snares and how to set them up attached to birch trees that bend and then snap
spring back.
So if you want to catch, some kind of animal, you have to bury it and then, make sure it stays down and then it, snaps and then you have this thing hanging in the tree. Well, the 6'5" kid, he's like 14. He's tall. He hadn't even hit his peak. All of a sudden they were laughing. There was all this stuff going on. I could hear it out in the woods. And then it was silent. And then the little squealer comes in. Dane's stuck in the tree. I was like, what does that mean? I go out there. Yeah, well, when you set a snare, you have to know where it is if you're going to be running around in the woods.
I think I have a suspicion of how this is going to end.
So he's hanging upside down with this tree, and how do you get him out of the tree? It worked really, really well.
They're lucky they didn't catch a black bear or something.
Oh my God. It was so many. There were so many of those examples, but that was the funniest. It's like he got snagged in his own snare. So, and he's now a trapper, and he does this sort of thing, but he knows, he's learned all good examples of what not to do.
Yeah, but you think of the things that a boy learns in that moment, right? Everything from my dad and mom have told me to watch where I step, to they've told me to pay attention to where I'm putting it. All of a sudden, you understand why the details matter in a way that you never did before.
Right.
And
plus, it's a great story.
And it's a great story. You can't, some of that stuff a kid cannot learn another way.
Exactly.
And it's there's no more joy in my life than the opportunity to do some of that stuff and watch.
And boys have to learn it that way.
I'll look out my home office window and watch my 4 oldest kids come across the lawn with, carrying toy guns and hatchets.
Oh, yeah.
And one of them's got a bow saw, and they've been out in the woods building working
stuff, which is awesome.
And my woods is, someday I'll sell this property, and someone's going to walk back there and be like, "What?
Oh, we have forts,
happened?
All kinds of forts. Now the goats have inhabited forts, but
it's so extraordinary.
There's so many funny stories. But reenacting battle scenes. So you get all your buddies over, and you're going to have the battle between the Pick warriors, who are painted blue and running around naked in the woods. Okay, just let's set the stage. And then you have the Roman legion, and there's a whole battle. Yep. And that's the Pick warriors beat the Roman legion because they weren't sure what to do with the blue painted naked men with flails. And so, of course, my oldest, who has to recreate history accurately, wants to do this. So they're going to have this battle, and there's this whole long build-up, and they're going to bring all their buddies over and have this day. They're going to do this. And, you know, when the mom of a bunch of boys found out that the Christmas present that my son gave to their oldest was a tartan with a paintbrush and blue jam, they were like, you are not going to the Sampsons. You are not doing this, you know. And so we had to modify the plans, and they were going to have to wear kilts. And so my youngest son decides, he was running around in the woods with the kilt, and they've made their own weapons out of cardboard, duct tape, you know, wood, and spray paint. They look great. They look real. And a lesson learned there is you don't run around the woods of Maine in the springtime with a kilt on unless you want to get a real bad case of poison ivy. So the Roman legion was safe. It was the Pick warriors where they were...
Died of poison ivy.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Well, and those things are just... And those are the things that I'm sure looking back for you now that you see the faces of kids in the school system and you think, I just want them, it doesn't have to be Pick warriors, but just want them to enjoy that kind of creativity, to learn from that kind of experience. And because I was never a Pick warrior, but I spent a lot of time in the woods playing army. We were World War II mostly.
Yeah, we did a lot of that too, but I thought that was the best story.
You learn so much, and it creates such a richness. So we could talk all day, and we probably shouldn't, but I want to close kind of with this question. So as the Christian Civic League, one of the challenges that I think we face is the church and their primary objective, right? The church's primary objective is to spread the gospel. And we have some churches that want to engage in the political and cultural problems, some that say, you know, that's not my role. My role is the gospel. And I'm not going to call that into question. I believe that that is the role of the church, is to spread the gospel. But how would you challenge a church or believers that are saying, like, you know, not my place to be involved in what's going on in the public school system, not my place to and I don't mean protest on the sidewalk, but not my place to be part of the healthy protest that's going on. Because I believe the church has the solution to all of the cultural problems, the cultural ills of our day. I believe that the church holds the keys to the future for the generation that's in our public schools. And I believe those keys are the gospel, right? But what would you say to the church, and why does it matter for them to be engaged?
That's a
I know that's a big question.
But that, you know, boy, the first thought that comes to my mind is, if not you, who? You have a treasure within you. You have the truth of life. If you're born again, you have embraced that, and it's in you. He operates in you and operates through you to others. If you're only confined within the confines of the church building, and you're having just social gatherings all the time, and then, you know, obviously services and things like that, and you're not engaging in the culture, no wonder our culture is literally going to hell. We are in a war. The war has accelerated exponentially, and the very people who have the power to do something about it, they have the power within them, are on the sidelines while our children are being destroyed. Literally mutilated.
Now, people will say, that's pretty harsh. Are they really getting destroyed? Is it really that bad, Heidi?
The state of Maine, percentage-wise, compared to the rest of the nation, has over twice as many children. Like in the 30, I want to say it's like 32%, I don't have the exact number. 32% of our children in the public school system are on the rainbow path, being transitioned, permanently castrated. The reality is harsh, and I know I have spoken to lovely believers who find it's too harsh to speak it. Well, guess what? In Jesus' time, he spoke harsh words. They were truth. It's not hyperbole.
Right.
It's in our schools. It's in our neighborhood. It's in your congregation. This is happening. And what is the church doing? If the church could just get mobilized to become engaged, I would ask, I've asked folks at church, just start to show up at your school board meeting. Get 3 or 4 friends from your church, sit in the back, listen, and then after you leave, pray. Next time, come back, pray before you get there. Listen, and then pray for God to show you what you can do. Because just like a child has unique gifts and talents, every adult does too. And how many know what their gifts are? They need to operate in them.
Right.
And this is our responsibility. Like I said, more is taught than caught. Who you are speaks volumes to people. If you're just out there and you haven't built a relationship with anybody and then you're sharing the gospel, I've done soul winning. I've seen some people get born again, having never met them before. But the most effective, most powerful tool is building a relationship and showing people who God is through you, and that you demonstrate this. And then when they're ready, just like with people in the legislature, who I've had opportunities to share Christ with, who have come to Christ in the legislature. But it's because of the relationship I built. And then there'll be a real hard time hits. But Heidi, how come you can handle this? Well, do you really want to know my answer? Let me share it with you.
It's I think it goes, in some cases for us as believers, it goes both ways too, right? We have, to your point, we have believers that do show up and don't have the relationship and just shout. And that's also a problem. That's driving people, like, it's not something I want to be part of. I will confess.
Having discretion is necessary. Read the first few chapters of Proverbs over and over and over. Wisdom, understanding, discretion.
It highlights it over and over. And I think this is a problem I have, and I've had to wrestle with. And it's this, I think sometimes we walk into those situations and think that we are going to have to solve the problem. And I want to say, like, God, there's not enough people at that school board meeting. I don't know enough about how a school board operates. It's too progressive, and they don't want Christians there. And God, I have too much to do already. So why? And I think we forget the most important part, which is God doesn't call us to fix the problem. He calls us to engage on His terms. And we serve, again, something I've had to remind myself of. If I truly believe I serve the most powerful, the King of the universe, who is omnipotent, omniscient, He's got it all. If I truly believe that, then I don't get to walk into the room as an underdog.
No.
I don't get to walk into the room as a loser.
You walk in as light. You are bright.
I walk in as light. I walk in knowing.
You change the atmosphere.
Yep, exactly. And so our call is, I think, while it's big, we also can shrink it back and say, no, my call is to go and to do that next thing. My call isn't to ultimately fix it. God will give me those opportunities as I obey, as I do what He's called me to do in those moments.
But understand what's happening.
Right.
Listen. and hear what God might say to you while you're listening to what's going on. It's going to curl your hair. It's horrific.
Yeah.
And but if the Christians just sit back, our children are being lost as we speak.
Right.
And that does sound like hyperbole.
But
it's so not.
But the evidence is there.
It's the reality. That's the
Right.
reality. And
Right.
we have ample examples.
Yeah.
That's why that symposium is going to be so powerful, because we're going to hear from the students and what's going on in the classroom, and the teachers that are in the classroom. Pray for the teachers who are good teachers in the classroom. We need more.
Right.
But you know what? You show up, you change the atmosphere. You're walking in as light. You bring 4 people. There's a lot more light in a very dark place. And you start to change the atmosphere. I don't think God's going to stay silent if you go and you just faithfully plan on attending every school board meeting.
Right.
Do it for 6 months and see what happens.
Yeah.
God will show you. I'm not going to tell you what to do. God will. And then listen. And then the biggest thing is have courage.
Yeah.
Courage is something people need to develop, because the church has been wrapped in a blanket of fear.
Well, and to go back, if we believe God is who he says he is, that's all the courage we need. Right? But we have
Take him at his word.
we have to wrestle with that sometimes,
Take him at
that
his
we are
word,
going to
yes.
take God at his word, that he is who he says he is, and that my courage is wrapped up in that,
Yeah.
in the character of the Almighty God.
And it starts with small steps. Courage is built.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to step in that. And I've been reading Joshua. We need to be like Joshua. Every step, it was one step at a time. God said, I'm going to give this land back to you. Everywhere you put your foot,
Yeah.
you're going to take it back.
Yeah.
That's one step at a time. Just like, he leads you, a lamp unto your feet. One step at a time.
Yeah.
Same principle. And
One of my favorite stories at the beginning of Joshua is when they are headed to Ai and they lose. And Joshua falls on his face. He's like, God, what happened? You said. And then there's this, like, you look at the passage, he never talked to God beforehand.
Right.
He didn't fall on his face before they went in. He didn't talk to God and then listen. He used his head. He used his strategy. He thought he had it. And too often that's me walking into a room and like, I've done all the assessment. I think we can win if we play this game right.
Yep.
And God's going, no, you didn't even talk to
Yep.
me. Let me be the power, and you obey. And
That's the sucking wind in the fetal position.
it sure
Yes,
is.
been
And
there.
we see that lots in the Bible too, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you the last word to close us out. But before I do, I've repeated this a couple of times, but we did a survey not too long ago. And one of the responses I got back on a question was the most obvious thing in the world. And I just hadn't thought about it. It really kind of was a kick in the gut to me. And this woman responded back that she said, darkness doesn't overcome light. Light has to retreat for darkness to win.
Yes.
And it just struck me that we can enter the room with light, or we can retreat and allow darkness to own the space. But the light of Christ is going to change any environment. And I get to see that in a real way this session at the legislature. There were a couple of different Bible studies going on. There was a Tuesday morning service that was going on. And while we didn't get political wins like we wanted, it changed the dynamic in the hearts and minds of a lot of the folks that are inside that building. And it just was that reminder that, like, light, we got to walk into the room. We can't keep retreating.
Right.
So anything, Heidi, any last word or challenge to the church as we close?
I think where 2 or more are gathered, the Lord is with you. Get some allies with you. Pray. Get direction. Take a step of faith. And then watch God move. But you know what? Apply Jeremiah 33:3. Ask him. He's got things that we haven't even thought about.
Yeah.
He wants to blow your mind.
Yeah.
are you willing to let him do that?
That's a good way to end our conversation. Heidi, thank you so much. It's
You're
been
welcome.
fun.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you for having me.